Sawasdee Krap, welcome to NBT World's The Fireside. I'm Benjamin Ruchopakan. Now, every week we have a fireside chat exploring what's going on in Thailand, diving deep into our latest obsessions. And here on The Fireside, we've talked a fair bit about Thailand's tourism sector. We've talked about the good and the bad and everything in between. And recently, there has been a few cases of misbehaving tourists and concerns of over-tourism that have gone viral on social media. And I've been, kind of writing them off as like some bad apples, but lately I've been having this nagging feeling in the back of my mind that I think the issue is a bit more complex than that. And I think it's time to question, what type of traveler does Thailand want to attract? What relationship does Thailand want to have with the people who visit? So joining me today is someone who knows way more about this issue and has dealt with this issue firsthand. This is Andrew Reel from Asian Oasis, which is a travel and hospitality boutique that's committed to environmentally responsible and community-based tourism. Sawasdee Krap, Kun Andrew.
Sawasdee Krap. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. So I wanted to, sort of build off of what we've talked about in previous episodes. And I really think that I can only do that with somebody who has direct firsthand experience and has been dealing with the problem their entire career. So for those who, don't know about you directly or Asian Oasis, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So Asian Oasis, as you said, is a responsible community-based tourism operator. And we can go a bit more into what that means later on. But essentially, we're providing responsible travel options. And for the part of myself, my background's actually in environmental science and psychology.
Right.
And when I started wanting to specialize, I looked into what it is I really cared about, and it was the environmental science side, and it was really about the human connection side. That's when I started to study regenerative design and regenerative design models, specifically in an urban environment at first. But that all kind of led me towards Asian Oasis, which as a community-based hospitality brand, it's rooted in regenerative design and rooted in how we can provide a better version of something that already exists, something that is positive in multiple ways for the environment, for the communities, and ultimately still for the economy as well.
Can you've used that word a couple of times, regenerative design, and I guess I understand it, I understand the word, but what does that mean in terms of design?
Yeah, I think an easy way to think of it is that we're constantly progressing. And when we used to say things like sustainability, it was this all-encapsulating word for doing better for the environment.
Yeah.
But we've kind of reached a point in which thinking sustainably is not enough. Sustainably is just how do we keep things going. But regenerative design challenges us to think beyond that and think at how we could actually make a positive impact, how we can use our business or use our product or just live our lives in a way that not only allows us to be sustainable and keep things going, but to provide a greater impact than if that thing or service or whatever it is didn't exist.
So everybody's talking about limiting their carbon footprint and being eco-friendly, but this is more than that, because sustainability, as I understand it, or at least as most businesses think about it, they're having to balance and choose between two objectives. But regenerative design is different.
Yeah, and maybe a term you've heard that is commonly used in Thailand is circular economy, and that is a facet of regenerative design. It's
I see.
The idea of taking our waste or taking things that might not inherently have as much value and creating more value so that we're not creating a linear economy where we're extracting and we're putting things back into the environment by doing circular design. So regenerative design challenges us to do something similar. And if we're talking about balancing different acts within a business, there's the I mean, traditionally a business is about making profit, but regenerative design would challenge us to look at all sorts of other factors. And it's not actually as niche as saying it's just sustainability. For us, we happen to focus on sustainability on the environment and communities, but it can also look at all sorts of other factors as well.
Gotcha. So it's really taking a broader view, setting more than one dimension of goals, like not just the bottom line of the profit, but how it affects people, how it affects the environment, things like that.
Yeah. And actually you mentioned the idea of a footprint, and this is often used to describe what we're doing that is negative. So we're like building up the negative things that we're doing. So we're always trying to reduce our footprint. But part of the concept of regenerative design is also to look at our handprint. Have you heard of the idea of a handprint? I've never heard
that. Yeah. I was just kind of nodding like, yeah, sure. But please tell me more.
Yeah. The idea of a handprint is, instead of just thinking about what it is we're doing that is negative, we're also challenging ourselves to constantly ask what it is we're doing that is positive.
Gotcha.
So what's our handprint on that community? What are we actually providing? What kind of value are we providing? And not just looking at the footprint, what is wrong.
Like cut, it's hard to keep thinking like, oh, well, we have to do less well. We have to, like, in commercially. But if we sort of broaden what success looks like with regenerative design, you can create a more sustainable system in general. You can create a system that gets better over time, and not just something that like, okay, well, we've done this amount of damage and try not to go any further, which feels very limiting and restricting. So yeah, I really like, I think I'm starting to get it. I think I'm starting to get the concept of regenerative design. So I want to talk in Thailand's context of tourism. So I think tourism, as we've understood it in the traditional sense, has been about extracting the value of a place, whether or not it's the nature, extracting like sort of even if it's something super eco-friendly, like walking through the park, you're extracting the value of that park. You're extracting the value of that island. It feels like one dimensional, which you were saying, the circular economy challenges that. This right now, it feels very linear, and then we have to stop it so that the island or the reef or the forest can recover. So I want you to sort of like explain to us how this becomes problematic in Thailand's context.
I think when it comes to the idea of people and our culture, and especially referencing the clip that you brought up, the idea of putting just a pure extractive value on people really kind of dehumanizes the full experience of what the thousands of years of culture and knowledge is, to just how much, just to like the economic value that is brought by tourism. Tourism, of course, is a huge part of, our economy, but there's so many more factors than someone bringing in their money. It's this two-way exchange of inviting a guest in and showing people our home, providing more than just a pure one-way service that kind of limits what the actual experience of that person is, or that one service, to just a dollar value.
Yeah, it does feel kind of reductive, right? Like when you say like, okay, this experience, it costs this much and you'll get X, Y, and Z. And it feels like I can kind of understand why it reinforces a certain mindset in some tourists that, well, I paid for this, therefore I own the experience, I own the service, And so I guess I feel like that kind of gets away from what we want. We start to see more problematic behavior because we're both, as the host and the guest, we're accidentally facilitating something that can become toxic, I guess. Not to say that is by default toxic, but that it can become toxic. So there is a demand for sustainability. There is a demand on the traveler side to leave a place better than they found it. What do you think are some of the obstacles to achieving that?
It's definitely both ways. I think a bit of it is the information, what people are actually privy to, the greenwashing aspect of it. It's become such a big trend to be sustainable,
right?
That there's a little bit lack of accountability. And, you know, I'll never claim to be perfect in that sense in sustainability, and that's not the only thing that we're measuring. But the important thing is being transparent in what you're actually claiming. To say just, you know, we are a super eco hotel kind of is meaningless.
Yeah.
To say we're a green hotel is meaningless. But the things that are meaningful is to say what you're actually doing, like what you're providing for the community, what you're providing for the environment. And that goes both ways. So as a traveler, you should be asking those questions. As a provider, you should be showing off that knowledge, whether it's for the guests or for other people to see and say that, hey, that's actually a great idea. You know, that composting thing, let me do that too. And then it's just this kind of shared communal knowledge. So
right. Really interested in the concept of community-based tourism as a response to mass tourism. We've talked about the issues of over-tourism, and it feels like competitive. It feels like the interests are competitive. How do you address the problems of competing interests in community-based tourism, or how is it's not a factor maybe?
So a lot of the times people see mass tourism and the huge amounts of money that it can bring in, and see that, you know, if we're going to scale back on some of that, we're going to lose on potential income from there. But a lot of times, if you take a look at what mass tourism is doing, it's this holistic picture that we need to take a look at what it's doing to the environment, the longevity of it, how much longer can our environment support this maybe over tourism, but also does that money actually go into the communities, does it spread evenly to the people that should be benefiting from the tourism, or is it kind of a larger company middleman, and maybe they're not even based in Thailand, and maybe the money doesn't even actually come in. So sometimes on the surface level, a big, you know, hotel that's gonna bring on 500 staff, it might seem like the best option because you're giving 500 people jobs rather than a smaller number in the community. But I think looking at the holistic picture, there's ways you can still have, you know, big brands and tourism for a more mass group, but just done maybe more responsibly. So I would challenge people to look at, you know, the negative impacts on tourism and to see how they can find ways to engage with the community a bit more, provide more authentic experiences, make sure that the communities are better benefiting from travelers, and the environments are benefiting too. That there's money going to conservation. People are taking a look at what the impact of tourism is. I know there was kind of mixed reception when Maya Bay closed.
Yeah, that's right.
I think general consensus was that it was good because they saw the coral repopulating, marine life increasing again. But, you know, that's also not sustainable to just close it because people want to,
like, commercially.
Yeah,
that's
commercially.
Not either.
So there's I'm not saying I know how to do it properly, but there's somewhere in between where people can still visit. But I would just challenge it's going to take, you know, a community effort. We've spent so many years building up this massive tourism industry that not in a blink of a day that someone's going to have all the answers for how we're supposed to do this properly. But yeah, I mean, it's going to take a lot of collective ideas and knowledge to change our tourism model to be better for everyone.
So for those who don't know, like, so we've talked about how the current model can be problematic and extractive in one way, where it's not necessarily benefiting the local people, and much less the environment, which if one day Mayabe is no longer as beautiful as the pictures, and people just it's touristy, it's overdone, they move on from it, then that's it. That's the end of that model. So with community-based tourism, I can understand the argument behind it's more sustainable for the environment and it's more inclusive for the people because you're hiring local and you're involving them in the tourism services. But why should travelers care? Like what's in it for them?
Yeah, I would see that anyone that engages with this type of traveling, you're engaging in a much deeper, meaningful way that will leave maybe a more lasting impression. You'll understand the country and the culture a bit better. So there's the positive impact on the guest, that they're traveling in a way where they're not just checking off the list of top destinations, bouncing from one spot to the next, but they're challenged to really understand the place that they're in, the historical, the cultural context, and maybe the importance of the location to the communities.
Yeah.
I think it fosters a better connection between the traveler and the host.
Right.
And ultimately we're traveling to, gain new experiences, make memories, but also grow in ourselves, grow our understanding of the world and of other cultures and people. And some of that might be lost if we're traveling in this fast-paced manner that is just hopping from one site and you're just checking it off.
Yeah, right. Kind of a shallow bucket list of like, oh, I wanted to go to 5 islands. I'll take this tour, and you're sort of min-maxing the cost on the number of islands you want versus how much, you want to spend.
Very much agree. And I think seeing some of the highlights is really important, of course, but also considering what kind of experience you're going to have. So if we took like your example of the 5 islands, if you're trying to get those 5 islands in one day, you're kind of just checking these things off. But the very idea of traveling to an island is to see this scenic beauty and enjoy it. But if you're going to 5 different islands, maybe each one has a unique facet to them that is different.
Yeah.
But you're just looking at them. Like, at what point are you looking versus actually experiencing them? Versus like if you stayed at one of the islands for a day or two and you actually experience what it was like to be in this scenic beauty versus, you know what I'm getting at? I don't know if
I think I get it. Like, well, I mean, if I were to, I had this experience in the States where I was going to the Smithsonian and then it was about to close in like 10 minutes. And I was just like, okay, I'll just speed through and see as many paintings as I can, which my friends were like, that was the silliest thing you've ever done.
Speed running the Smithsonian.
I sped run, the Smithsonian. And I was just like, I can't even remember a single painting. I wish I spent the entire 15 minutes looking at one painting or even talking to a guide.
Yeah. Like you're looking at them all, which is not that different from just seeing a photo of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's true. Like if you don't take the time to really experience a place, then how is that different from seeing a photo of it? Really? Like even if you were there, right?
Yeah.
So how does with community-based tourism, like how is it the local guides that deepen the experiences? Like what kinds of activities are people responding to?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different types of community-based tourism. It can show up in so many different ways. Some are more focused on the environment, sustainability, and like you said, some are more focused on the guides and the actual communities that are there. It's just the idea of this mutual aid concept that we're benefiting all parties as best as we can. So things people often respond to that I think that's really easy is the human connection, like meeting an actual person and being able to talk to them about their different lived experience and not just having this exotic view of a different culture that you just snap photos of, but maybe understanding in a slightly deeper reason for like their beliefs, what's meaningful to them, what their daily lives are like. I think that's a very easy way for people to connect, because everyone has a different, hobbies, set of interests, set of beliefs, and that's always easy to connect with.
We've been like talking about the impact of social media on mental health and stuff in other episodes, and I do feel like when you say like a highlight reel, I can see it now, like the person that's like, ooh, I want to recreate that content, and they just go to patronize a place for the content. Like how do you feel about that? How do you feel about like people who are less experiencing it with you, and just still like even in the moment, even in a community-based model, they're still kind of being tourists about it.
By going to these places and sharing their experiences, they're exposing others who may have never known about these experiences, and encouraging others to travel there as well. But it's very much about how it's presented, how they're experiencing things, and how they're relaying that eventually. And the negative can come in the fact that it's pretty quick and easy for that to be commodified, that one unique experience that they had, that maybe in a slower paced growth can be carefully curated so that it's following this model that's respectful, responsible for everyone. But sometimes in our age, things go viral, and everyone all at once wants to come and experience that same little thing, and it's really hard to, you don't want to tell people you're not allowed to experience this. Like, we want people to be a part of it and engage, but then it comes with the problem that you're gonna get people that come in and commodify a resource or a culture, and that's when we see the exploitation and exploitative kind of things that come out of the negative sides of tourism.
How that's interesting. Like, how do you, if that can happen, even when you've communicated that the experience will be one thing, even when you say that, okay, this is for this kind of traveler, and you've already like sort of pre-selected almost through advertising the kind of traveler that this should that this is for, and you still, like, something goes viral, which is great for the business model, but perhaps
every business's dream, right, to go viral.
To go viral. So how does like a model like that, how do you, at Asian Oasis, for example, like, how do you protect your stakeholders from that kind of commodification?
We're able to have our hands on only what we're able to, if I put it simply. We have we have 14 lodges, so if we had 100 lodges, it would be a lot harder for us to kind of navigate that experience if they're suddenly all full. But if our lodge is fully booked up, we know that that's what we're able to manage with both the community and both what our environment, our trails, our experiences, what we're able to handle.
So like, it's already kind of built to a sustainable capacity in the first place.
Right, in a way.
Right. So it's kind of like, well, even if the demand outstrips the capacity, then it's kind of, there's a cap on how much you're willing to take, even for the sort of long term of it. And not to take it too far out of Thailand, but a model that I really like is in Botswana. They kind of saw what is happening with mass safari tourism in a lot of the Southern African countries, and they wanted to open up their wild experiences to tourists, but do it in a way that maybe isn't going to have the same detrimental effects to the environment. I think in the last few decades, Kenya lost like 90% of its wildlife. Oh my gosh.
And Botswana, on the other hand, has the largest population of elephants. There's a national
More than
park.
Thailand? Come on.
Yeah, well, African elephants. Actually, I don't know about Thai elephants, but they have such this. They have this low quantity, high quality model where their safaris, are a little bit more wild. They're not as easily accessible, and they're a bit more expensive because they're making sure to hire local guides. A lot of the tour operators and companies are owned by locals, and the higher price is because they're reinvesting that into conservation. And by doing that, they're regenerating their environment and making it better for the tourists that are coming in. And there's kind of a automatic cap that gets put on. And I don't think that model is like a one size fits all everywhere, because, I don't think the cap on tourism should be money. I think it should be accessible for everyone. But in that model of Botswana safaris, that was the way to go. And something built into that system can definitely work in Thailand and other places. It just has to be adjusted to the right parameters.
If we have a parting message for our audience, like how you want people to think about tourism, about pricing, about value.
It's really important, maybe not just tourism, but life in general, to just think about what impact we're having, on everything, on the environments, on the person that you just spoke with. And I think it's just, with so much in our world, it's so important just to be part of imparting positivity into that. And I'm not trying to spread like toxic positivity, but just there's a lot of value into positively contributing to our communities in some way. And when you visit, you're part of the community in a way. Like, you're part of the guest. Even if a traveler comes for a day or two, they in that day or two can be a part of the community in some way. So I would challenge people just to think of what positive impact they can have. And sometimes it's just as simple as doing a bit of research and choosing a responsible place to stay. No one's perfect. You might not always make the best decisions, but if you can kind of lead with that foot, then at least you're trying to head the right direction. And you don't need to, come in and volunteer for 2 years or anything. Like, making a responsible choice when you're traveling is already big enough.
Just thinking about like little choices as well, right?
Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And I really appreciate the time, you taking the time to talk to us about such an important topic. And now I want to turn it over to our audiences. Do you prefer like jam-packed itineraries, just, filled to the brim with different experiences? Or do you prefer going at a slower pace, going at your own pace? Let us know in the comments section of NBT World's online channels. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Spotify. And thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Thank you.